This is crafted by God. Plants have architecture, animals have architecture. God was the architect.
Welcome to Grounded, a podcast for restoring the church to a biblical foundation. And today I have a guest. His name is Dr. Gordon Wilson. He is the host and narrator, and I don't know, are you even the producer? Maybe
No.
Of the show?
I'm just
The Riot?
I'm just the narrator, and I do some writing for it.
You're just a handsome face up there. So the series is called The Riot and the Dance. It's a nature documentary series, and I just want to say right up front here, Gordon, they are fabulous.
I will pass that along to the videographers.
They're absolutely fabulous in every way, just very wonderfully and professionally done. And here's the thing, folks, it's a nature documentary. It is so refreshing to get to watch and listen to a nature documentary where you're not hammered with and pelted with the earth is 1 billion years old, this is how things evolved, and
exactly.
This was that, and this came to that, and this evolved for that. It's so wonderful to have you say repeatedly things like, God made them for this.
Yes.
God gave them those legs. Oh, yeah. I absolutely love it.
Yeah, it's sort of self-evident, but everybody's been inculcated with the evolutionary narrative ever since nature documentaries came out. It's been all of the complexity, the diversity, the beauty is all of the glory and honor is given to random chance events, time, natural selection. No credit, no glory is given to God. And that, I would say that amounts to blasphemy.
That's evil.
Yeah. It might be inadvertent. They may not be shaking their fist in God's face in that way because they don't think God exists, but ignoring God and just attributing this glory to nothing but meaningless forces, purposeless forces, is a high-handed insult to the Lord of all creation.
Yeah, big amen. Let me give our listeners a bit of a bio. So you're a PhD in environmental science and public policy from the George Mason University. You have traveled the world. I don't know where you haven't been to explore animals, ecosystems, and the wonders of the natural world. And here's the beautiful thing, all from a young earth creationist perspective. Young earth, brother. Right. Bless you. Right. Yeah, I'm holding that flag up too. Young earth. Definitely
young earth. Interestingly, a lot of old earthers like it. We're not leading with that. I think it's young earth by implication. Yeah. It's inferred. If you connect the dots at all, especially when you look at Riot, we're talking about predator-prey relationships, parasite-host relationships, and all of the nastiness of nature, and we attribute that to the fall. So if you're an old earther of some flavor, and there's a lot of different flavors of old earth, you usually have to say that death is normative. And so by if you connect the dots, you will come away going, this guy's got to be young earth. But for some reason, a lot of people don't connect the dots, and that young earth is not apparent to them. But yes, we are young earth, and I've written a number of lay-level articles for Answers in Genesis. If people know some of what I do in my other work, they can know that I'm one of those young earthers.
You're one of those. Very nice. Let's get personal for a minute. Just tell us a little bit more about your background. Like, I think somewhere in this I saw that as a boy you loved bugs. And you loved the outdoors.
Yeah, I liked anything that moved. It was more reptiles. I did my master's in entomology, which is insects, but in Annapolis, Maryland, where I grew up until I was 7, anything that moved was just fascinating to me. My brothers, Doug and Evan, we had a woods across the street, and they brought home some box turtles. I was 5 or 6, and I looked at the box turtles, and I was just so entranced by their beauty and symmetry. And I just fell in love with reptiles particularly. But, one time I remember somebody had a blue crab. Somebody threw a blue crab in our sandbox, and I was fascinated with that. Anything that's today, I love it all. If it's green or wiggles, I love it. But reptiles and insects, God gave me a wonderful detour. I wanted to go into herpetology in grad school, and there was no openings or stipends here. So entomology opened up, and I'm so glad I did entomology, because God made more insects than any other group of animals in the world. The very first animal, I'd say, that set the hook as far as getting me really interested in biology was the box turtle. And then I was able to do my PhD on the ecology of the box turtle.
So you're raised in Annapolis, so you probably know where Westminster is. I was raised 12 miles north of Westminster, out in northern Carroll County, and man, we had box turtles in those days.
They're great.
What happened to all the box turtles? I don't see them anymore.
I know, because they keep getting, there's a slow attrition because of a lot of road kills. And, they're still fairly common. Well, they're common compared to some other things, but compared to what they were back when we were kids, they're a lot less common.
All right, so let's talk about, that was the origin of your interest in animals, turtles and bugs and things. Let's talk about the origin of this series. Where did this come from? Like, was there a conversation one day and somebody said, hey, you ought to make a series out of that? Or what sparked this?
It's very vivid in my head. In 2015, spring, sometime that spring, Andrew Krapachet's CEO of Red Balloon, and in our church community, his family loved nature documentaries, but they were sick and tired, as you said, of the evolutionary narrative. And he came to Nate Wilson and said, hey, he knew Nate was a best-selling author, and thought, okay, this guy is a shaker and mover. I'm going to ask him if he would do a nature documentary that was a Christian creationist nature documentary. And Nate said yes. And then we lived right next door to Nate, and Nate came over to my house and said, Uncle Gordon, would you narrate? He told me what Andrew's proposal was, and that he accepted it, and then asked me if I would be the narrator. And I said, let me think about it. Yes.
Didn't think about it too long.
No, it didn't take long, because it's interesting. I'm not a shaker mover type by personality. I'm very content. I teach at New St. Andrews College, and I teach a general biology course called Natural History. And then I teach a number of electives that do a deep dive into different types of animal groups. And also I teach botany. Like I said, I like anything that's green or wiggles. I think of the Palouse here in northern Idaho as the Shire. And I am Bilbo, minding my own business in my hobbit hole, when Nate, also known as Gandalf, comes over and asked me to do this. And I thought, well, here's the opportunity. I might as well jump on this creative bandwagon and go for a ride. Nate has told me that when he was a kid, when I was doing my master's in entomology, he was 10, and I needed to do a huge insect collection for one of my classes, and I took Nate on an insect collecting trip. I was just trying to be a nice uncle, He's 10 years old, but little did I know that he was going to be a powerhouse, and he's told me, and he wrote in his when he autographed our copy of 100 Cupboards, he wrote, to Uncle Gordon, who gave me an outdoor imagination, and to Aunt Meredith, who taught me how to read, my wife. And so another lesson it taught me is really, really pour into pour into your kids, pour into your relatives. If you have a community where your extended relatives are there, and God gives you opportunity, do not hinder the children from coming to me, Jesus said. It's like the children are so important. You don't know what's going to happen and what seeds you've planted in your children when you do something. And I was thinking I was boring my nephew, to death because it was early spring and the insects weren't out, and I found a road cut and we did some fossil collecting, and apparently that was formative. And and look where we are now.
Wow. Now, you call the series The Riot and the Dance, and you began to explain the first term, the riot, a few moments ago. Haven't explained it. We'll start again. What's the riot part of this, and what's the dance part of this, please?
Okay, the riot, again, is the fact that the creation is broken because of the fall. Man, through his rebellion and disobedience of God, all of creation has been subjected to futility, as it says in Romans 8. And it's not just, it says the wages of sin is death. And so we know from Genesis 1:29 and 30 that plants were given to both man and animals for food. That was our diet. We were vegetarian. You might say, what? How could it be a good creation if we were just not having bacon? But God is control of all of that. And so whatever it was glorious, and would put, the best bacon to shame. We don't know how our taste buds work and how it's perceived. So anyway, it was great. And then the fall happened, and then God opened up the menu to include animals in Genesis 9:3. So predator prey, and this is where the young earth implications come in. You can't have millions of years of death prior to Adam sinning. So
death coming by Adam.
So that's the riot. And when we in the Riot and the Dance videos, we don't steer away from the carnage and gore. We've some disturbing shots of elephant seals and giant water bugs eating frogs. And it's not a basket of kittens. It is rough out there. It's a dog-eat-dog world. Now, evolutionists just think that's the way it works. That's the way creatures have evolved through, survival of the fittest, nature red in tooth and claw. And we're making it clear that, no, we're not shying away from it, but we're making it clear that that is a consequence of man's rebellion against God. And I think even creationists don't really fully connect those dots. They think death is normal, and it's not normal. The last enemy to be destroyed is death.
Nice. Amen. So that's the riot. What's the dance?
The dance is the fact that still, even though it's broken, the glory of God is still very clearly revealed. We see it in even in animals that are predators. The sprint of a cheetah, the various courtship rituals of birds and the birds of paradise. There's dances, there's literal dances out there, but also at a higher level, not just the literal dances, but at a higher level, the cycling of nature, what biologists or ecologists call biogeochemical cycles of the carbon cycle and the nitrogen cycle. Everything is sort of a dance, a balanced dance. Now, some of it is been modified to accommodate this brokenness, but there's these dances at the ecology level, there's dances at the molecular level. You go down to within the cell, and if you you listen to some or watch some of the computer graphics of molecular machines, the DNA replication, RNA transcription, protein translation, all these molecular processes are dances. The Krebs cycle, the Calvin-Benson cycle. These are molecular enzymatic pathways And it's if you break it down into the details, it is a dance. So the glory of God is still revealed in all of this at the molecular level, all the way up to the ecology level. And I would say that, Romans 1:20 says God's invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made. It's not all a wreck. It's been bent, it's been twisted, but it's not a wreck completely. It still works and it still gives God glory.
I really like that part, the riot and the dance. I like the phrase that you use there, and I think that describes things that you portray in the films very well. So another thing you do is maybe it's a little bit surprising that you're not really claiming to do apologetics for the existence of God. Rather, throughout the series, you assume that it's always running in the background. It surfaces here, it surfaces again when you say, look how God made this, God did that, and so on. Mm-hmm. Is there a reason why you took that approach? You're not trying to prove God's existence, you're assuming it?
The intelligent design, a few creation videos generally use, and it's fine as far as it goes, you can use the creation as an apologetic to show that, evolution can't do this, does not have the innovative capability or the creative capability. So there's nothing wrong with the apologetic approach, but we realize that there's all these Christians out there that already believe that God created. They don't need to be convinced. Okay. And that's a huge part of the population. So if you're only using creation to prove the existence of God, it's like, is that all that creation is used for? No, the creation can give glory to the God who is. And so just like Attenborough in the BBC, all of his work, he's now over 100 years old, and he's still going. He assumes evolution. He assumes it. And he doesn't go around trying to prove that evolution happens. Evolution did this, evolution did that over millions of years. And we want to take the same approach because our audience is mostly believers. And we're saying God did this. Let's celebrate it. It's not just an apologetics tool. That's why we call it a cinematic celebration of creation. So here we are. We can look at it from almost an entertainment perspective of just going, wow, look at the glory of God in creation. And we see that in the Psalms, Psalm 104, particularly. That's my favorite psalm, where the psalmist is giving glory to God for his abundant provision of food, water, habitat for both man and animals, domestic and wild. It's just great. Ooh, I love Psalm 104.
Many Christians nowadays, and by the way, you said a lot of Americans believe in the existence of God. That's a very high number. I forget exactly what it is, but I'm thinking it's in the upper 80%. Maybe it's even 90% of Americans would say, yes, I believe there's a great being, a higher power, whatever. Right. Do you happen to know?
I don't know. I know it's over 50 for sure. And I think a lot of people who've been government schooled all their life just kind of by default believe that evolution, if they do believe in God,
explains everything.
God, you hear this a lot, God used evolution, because they're like, right, well, I don't have the intellectual horsepower to refute evolution, so I'm just going to default with their narrative, but I still can't quite swallow the proposition that there's no God. That's a hard sell unless you're a real hardcore try to convince yourself to be an atheist. But I think atheism is an endangered, at least a threatened species, and hopefully endangered. And with all these podcasts happening now with some big guns, they may not be young Earth, James Tour, and he has had Stephen Meyer and John Lennox, and these are big guns out there. Mm-hmm. And I think that even though the old guard might be stuck in this their ways as far as belief in evolution. I think the younger, more malleable, more open-minded students that are going into biology, if they're listening to a lot of these podcasts from brilliant scientists, I think that the table will turn, the tide will turn. I hope evolution goes down with a crash in my lifetime. That's my hope.
That would be better than seeing the wall go down with Ronald Reagan. And
It would.
Yeah.
And the thing is,
amazing.
I mean, it can go down, but then if you don't have the gospel to rush in and fill that void, you're just going to get other weird spiritualism filling the void, New Age stuff and all sorts of other religions are going to try to fill that void. So we can't just be about convincing people that there's a creator. I mean, yes, we want them to know there's a transcendent creator and it's not a pantheism, but we need to, bring them all the way to Jesus.
Yes. Now, you're absolutely right. You hinted at this. I want to talk about it. An awful lot of Americans anyway, probably an awful lot of people all over the world now, have just had it hammered into their psyches, into their minds. Science explains everything, and that there's a great gulf between science and religion, between science and Christ, science and Christianity, and you kind of have to make a choice. All right, I'm a believer, but I know science is telling the truth. Science is a real thing. Science is science. You've got to believe the science and all that.
Right.
How do you help somebody who's struggling? Can I be like fully Christian and really go with everything that's in the Bible and yet not have to park my brain?
At the park, cash your brain in at the church door. You don't. But they need to know some definitions. There's faith, and we say faith in science. Well, what faith in what? There's all sorts of faith in the wrong thing. The evolutionist has faith, and irrational faith, that this can all happen by chance. So you can look at science and go, what does matter and energy do without a designer? Well, it doesn't do life. Even if you start with matter and you assume matter's eternal, but it's problematic at every turn. You've got to say, okay, where did the matter come from? That's the first step, Right. So matter coming from nothing, well, that's not very scientific, because the first law of thermodynamics is that matter cannot be created or destroyed. Now, we as Christians can say, but God is supernature. God is beyond nature. He transcends nature. So for God, who always is, he's the uncaused first cause. He can bring something out of nothing. By definition, he has the power to do that. The creation is his spoken word, but nature cannot beget itself. I mean, that's the cosmological argument. You cannot have nature bootstrap itself into existence, because there's no bootstraps, there's no boots, and there's nothing to haul on them. When you're talking about something from nothing, like a point singularity, that you might couch it in all these highfalutin terms, but it's still ridiculous, because if there's nothing, that means no thing. And when I say no thing, I mean nothing, no thing,
capital
no,
N-O.
No thing, like no quantum weirdness, no strings, nothing. No energy, no matter, nothing. Now, how can you have nothing, I mean, nothing, do something? I mean, you have to have something to do something, and to bring something into existence, you have to have something there. And God can do it, because that's supernatural, but nature can't do that. So from the get-go, you have to have something produce matter. And then the other huge leap, which is orders of magnitude more, is going from dead matter to living matter. And that's where the origin of life stuff, that is just a joke. The belief that biomolecules can synthesize, DNA can auto-assemble itself, and amino acids can auto-assemble themselves and form primitive cells. I mean, the more you know about cells, the more crazy complex they are. And there's so many working parts, and everything has to be ordered. I mean, it's, again, like a very, very high-tech machine, like a printing press that's spitting out books. You just feed it paper in the right way, and out comes a book. If you had all of the parts of a printing press in a big, huge dumpster and spun it in a big tumble dry, you're not going to get a printing press. Even if you had all the parts, you're not going to get a printing press. And so, life is it's just really crazy blind faith. It doesn't mean they're stupid. They're not stupid, but they've just made an a priori commitment to saying evolution's true, and they hang on to that commitment, and then they pour all of their intelligence into trying to build scenarios that produce that result. But if you take a deep dive into all of the scenarios, it's just a joke. So faith, this is where you need to have your critical thinking skills intact. I never went to a Christian college. It was K through 12, secular evolution all the way, K through 12, undergrad evolution, grad evolution. But you have to go deeper and go, does this make sense? And it doesn't. It just, at every turn, I was willing to be like, show me. And when I asked the deep questions, they gave me really pitiful answers. And I was thinking, is this all? I mean, it was kind of like you're being awed by the Wizard of Oz, with the big smoke, and then all of a sudden you pull the curtain back and it's a little old man. It's like, that's what evolution is. It is pitiful when you actually strip it down to its essential processes. Scientists are herd animals. And so when they've been taught by PhDs that this is true and it's just fact, most people will just go with the flow and they don't ask the hard questions. So faith and
better for funding anyway.
Yeah, faith and science are totally compatible if you think through it. Now, I don't think that science, you have to know the difference between historical science, which is trying to figure out what happened in the past through evidence. It's sort of forensic. It's like a whodunit mystery. You can't repeat it. You can't observe it. You're just having to piece together evidence and go, what's a scenario that best explains this evidence? And then there's empirical science, which uses a scientific method. And most people don't have a clear distinction in their head. And so when some scientists are saying, look at our ethos, we can put a man on the moon, we can send a satellite to Mars, we can do all of this, but that's through empirical science. So they gain a lot of ethos through that empirical science. And then when they switch gears over to historical science and go, thus saith science, this is what happened millions of years ago, they're on the skinny branches. I mean, not just skinny branches, they're off the branches. The certainty level is so bad compared to empirical. But they get their ethos from the empirical, and then they switch gears, and most people go, well, they're smart on these other things. I will believe them on their proclamations about what happened in the past. And it's just, again, lack of critical thinking.
Yep. So you can be a Christian. Listeners, you can be a Christian, and you can listen to good science,
very good
well-reasoned science, and there's no conflict between them. Amen. Amen. What is your hope? You put a lot of work into this series, and again, I want to tell the listeners, they're fabulous. You got to get your wife, get your kids, and gather everybody together and watch them. So there's two other men in the studio with me here. One of them's over here. He's one of my fellow elders, and he and his wife and kids have watched He said he believes they've watched every single one of these. I'm not at that level yet. But what a wonderful thing to do with your family. What do you hope happens in somebody's life when they have watched some or all of your series? What's it supposed to do in them?
It's supposed to give them new eyes to see nature in different light. Because often because anytime we see nature, it's some reptile guy coming through the park showing their snakes, and that's great. That there's people that are itinerant that show kids animals, or you go to the zoo. But every time the kids get exposed to the things they love, like animals, it's always put in the context of these evolved. And what I want people to do is see animals as the handiwork of God, not, oh, this is the realm of secular science, and I wish and yearn to be a secular scientist so that I can do the same thing. I want them to have just new eyes to go out and to their backyard and look at grass and flowers and bugs and turtles and lizards and snakes and birds and all. Pick your favorite and see that this is crafted by God. It's architecture. Everything's got architecture. Plants have architecture. Animals have architecture. God was the architect. He built that to look like that, but it's not just static architecture. It's engineering. So it's engineering, it's art, it's sculpturing, but it works. It's not just like Michelangelo's David is great, but it is just carved out of marble and it doesn't move and breathe and run. And God's architecture is both architecture and engineering. So I want them to see that this is God's handiwork. Now, they may know it up here because that's what they learned in Sunday school, but there's often a disconnect. Oh, every time I see cool stuff or hear cool stuff about animals, it's always from a secularist. And I want kids... the other thing is I don't want them to think, oh, I have to go to Borneo or Indonesia or Ecuador to see the glory of God. They can step right outside of their house and see it right there, get down and see the glory and the diversity of life. Now, not everyone is meant to become a biologist. Kids often have a any ragamuffin kid that's out there exploring and climbing trees and likes to catch frogs, that does not mean he's going to be a biologist. Just because they like animals, they need to realize, don't over romanticize it and go, oh, I like animals. Being a biologist is going to be like living in a petting zoo. No, it's not going to be living in a petting zoo. There's a lot of hard academic work that goes into learning how animals work and physiology, anatomy, molecular biology. And many of them get interested in life because of the petting zoo experience, or they saw a cool documentary, but I don't want them to get, disillusioned and go, oh, it's all going to be glorious. I mean, I had that happen when I was watching Jacques Cousteau in the 60s. I was like, oh, I want to be a scuba diver on the Calypso and it's the glory. But no, that's not what biology is. But everybody, whether they're a biologist or not, they can appreciate God's handiwork and see it as God's handiwork.
Now, you mentioned Cousteau and being in the water. One of the episodes I watched, you're in the water with sharks.
Yeah.
You are actually in the water with sharks. They're swimming around. Right there they are. Did you like that?
Well, I really didn't have much of a choice. When I agreed to be the narrator, it's like getting on the bus and you can't just say, I'm going to get off the bus now. when
Somebody
there's
else
no
could do
bus
the
stop.
sharks.
It's
Send
like we're
ND
going to
in there.
Hawaii, and I think we're going to. Nate may have told me. I'm sure he told me we're going to swim with sharks, but it was one of those things where it's the package deal, gang. You're a narrator. They had a perfect safety record, one ocean diving, and we signed our life away.
I'm not sure that would comfort me, that perfect record.
The perfect, basically that, the charter service, and they knew their stuff, and they knew what to tell us and how to behave in the water. But we still had to sign, a form that said that they're not responsible for any loss of limb or life. And then we got in the water, and I wasn't that nervous, maybe because of my childlike trust in the people who were our guides. They did it all the time, and they were sharks, sandbar sharks and Galapagos sharks, and they're serious sharks, but they're if you behave correctly in the water, you will avoid being part of a feeding frenzy.
You will survive. Well, we see you survived, so thankful for that.
I did survive, yes.
I've got a final question for you, and that is, will there be more installments in this series, or are you and ND or somebody else dreaming up a whole different series you'd like to do?
Well, I know that Nate and Aaron, ND, and Aaron Wrench, they're the ones doing the wheeling and dealing with Angel Studios. And so that's not my realm. And they're the ones that figure out, okay, what's going to be the ratio of funding, who's going to fund what and how much. And I know that Angel wants to continue, but I don't know, all of the details. I'm just sitting loose in the saddle, and I'm ready for a text or a phone call that says, we've got a green light. We're heading for season 2. So we've kicked around some ideas. James Ingebrigtsen's the director, and he's got ideas just in the brainstorm stage. And it also depends on how much we're funded, and how much we can afford to do. So we'll see. I'm ready to go. Attenborough is still doing it. He's over 100. He might not be out in the field, but I don't know if he's continuing to narrate, or if they're just using AI versions of his voice.
Well, I hope you get to do some more, because a whole lot of people will really enjoy those. Dr. Gordon Wilson, thank you for joining me so much. The Riot and the Dance, that's the name of the series. And there's the Riot and the Dance Water, and there's the Riot and the Dance Earth. And
then the episodes of Africa through Komodo are on Angel as well. And then Canon Plus is able to stream it after Angel has got it for a month, and then Canon Plus can pick it up after a month, and now they're both streaming it.
So our listeners can watch them all on Canon Press, right?
Yeah,
just go
Canon
there and
Plus.
get a subscription, because there's so much other goodness waiting for you there.
Yeah, there's so much content that Riot is just one of the bits of content on that. There's so many books, and there's so many podcasts. It's just a lot of content.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Brother, thank you so much for joining me today. And to our listeners, thank you for joining us today. Hope you'll come back to Grounded again. And you can do us a favor if you want and just share this with somebody. Give us a like, leave a comment, and we will bless the Lord for you. Thank you. See you next time.
Thank you, Steve.